Hello, everyone. For those of you that don't know, OWI did a Reddit AMA a couple weeks back, and I never really covered it on this channel. They have a lot of good information in here. A lot of you diehard squad fans probably have already gone through a lot of this. But for all you people who watch the videos and just play the game casually and don't know about, the Reddit and the subreddit stuff and all that information, we're going to be going through the AMA. I'm going to be, highlighting some of the more important questions or interesting questions, and I'll be giving you my impressions on, the direction and how they answer it and stuff like that. So the first question, this is a really important question, a really big question that a lot of people are kind of asking for and wondering about is what's the current roadmap on Squad? Right now in Squad, there is no official roadmap. We don't actually have like a point by point kind of list of the features and things that they're working on and how they're going to knock them out and stuff like that. OWI right now is pretty much just churning out content. And they might have a roadmap privately, within their own company, but it's not public. It's not something that, we see things being checked off and is very visible to us. So it's a pretty important thing as a player base to kind of like see the direction that the game is going, what features are actually being worked on now and not just being worked on in the future. And so it's just a question that I think a lot of players had on their mind. And OWI goes on to say they don't have a public roadmap, but there's something that they're looking to add and they're considering. So we'll see if they do actually add it. But 2018, they're just trying to get it to be more complete. And that's pretty much obvious. And these are the things that they're working on right now. It's supporting 100 players in a server. Right now we're at 80. So that's another 20 people. That's a lot of people. 100 players, that's 50v50. You think about some of these maps that are really medium to small size, like Sumari, Logar, OP First Light. I don't know how those are going to handle 100 players, but maps like Kohat, Yiharivka, and Gorodok, those and Belayat, those maps are really going to benefit from the 100 players on a server. So it's going to be interesting to see like if they kind of phase out those smaller maps or if servers just lock it to only the bigger maps, because like I'm trying to imagine Sumari with 100 players on it, and it's just going to be a bloodbath. So it's going to be interesting to see how they implement the 100 players, when they implement it, and how it's going to change the game. Because I think a lot of players don't necessarily think like, oh, they're adding 20 more players. It's not going to affect too much. It's just more players on the map. But you think about, that's an extra, that's another squad, a full squad on either team. So it's going to be really, really crazy to see 100 people on a server, because that's a pretty big bump. The next thing is helicopters. Everyone's waiting for helicopters. That's the next feature that I want in Squad is helicopters, because I think personally it's the next game-changing feature. Tanks not so much, like they are working on tanks and AT, but helicopters add a whole vertical play to the battlefield, right? It's gonna give you so much more mobility to get behind enemy lines, fly over things, fast rope if that ever gets added. Drop on top of buildings, drop people in other locations that aren't easily accessible by land vehicles. So it's going to be really, really cool to see helicopters come in. There's already a helicopter mod that we've kind of showcased, I think, a couple months ago, but officially seeing helicopters in will be really, really fun and really cool, because I personally think it's going to change the battlefield up a ton. Tanks and heavy AT. Tanks are something that we get showcased a lot on the recaps, and they look clean. We haven't seen them in play. We don't know how they're going to interact, especially because the buildings don't have destructibility. That's one thing that kind of really hard counters vehicles right now, is those buildings just create this honeycomb of endless windows and doorways for players to hide in, and it's really hard for vehicles to counter that because there's no way to destroy that building or level that building effectively right now. Maybe they'll add like more wall penetration damage models for certain weapons, or things of that nature to help clear out buildings. But man, buildings are really strong right now, both against infantry and vehicles, because you cannot level them. So it's going to be interesting to see how they implement tanks with their current buildings, and how they're going to balance that, giving a significant amount of attention to the game's design, game modes, and rules. So they haven't really touched the the game modes too much. They're pretty much the same kind of stale game modes that we've been playing for a while. They added Invasion a while back, and I love Invasion, but I think they need to retouch a lot of the layers and a lot of the game modes. Insurgency never gets played just because it's got such a great premise, but it's executed so haphazardly, like so wish-washy. If they just committed and finished Insurgency, man, I would be playing Insurgency and Invasion like all the time. Like, I think those are the two best game modes that have so much potential, but they just need to work on the layers and work on how that game mode works. Game design, they did, V10 was a huge step in game design, and we kind of see the direction that OWI is going, right? They want more of that, experience, battle experience kind of gameplay with that suppression and that movement changes. They want to make it a little less arcadey. At least that's the direction that we see them going right now. They add more weapon sway and things of that nature, and it's definitely a step in an interesting direction. Definitely. As far as like what players want, I know a lot of people that want things to be more, I guess, arcadey or more snappy, and people who want it to be more experience based. So it's going to be really, really, really weird to see how OWI handles this kind of, I guess, not necessarily divide, but different interests in the player base moving forward with their design choices, and how they're either going to compromise or commit to one way or the other. User experience in particular for new players and squad leaders. So this is really important because user experience, especially focusing on new players and squad leaders, that's all community based right now. There's no like official tutorial for squad leaders or new players at all. You pretty much just get dumped into the game, and the only people who teach you are other community members. And that's great and terrible at the same time. It's great because you really get a sense of community in squad, right? You have people helping and teaching other players, but then it's tough because if no one teaches you or you don't ask to get taught, you have a really steep learning curve that you have to kind of surmount, and it's really daunting for a player that doesn't interact with the community. But for those players that take advantage of the community, who talk with other people, who really form connections and speak with either clans or experienced players, like, they're gonna learn a lot really fast. But for the player that gets dumped into squad and they don't really have too many friends, and they don't go out of their way to interact with the community or to ask people for help or stuff like that, the game doesn't teach you anything in and of itself. There's some tutorials, but it's not a very fleshed out system right now. So seeing this would be great because, whenever we have a sale, this is why there's so much confusion and so much inexperienced players and new squad leaders and stuff like that, is because the game doesn't teach you anything. It's all community based or first hand experience based as far as learning goes. So it'd be really interesting to see how they're going to teach new players in a very fluid, non-obstructive way. So, yeah, we're going to talk about those things. A couple things that they want to get done as well is the Great Britain faction. So they are working on it. They're trying to get it out for 1.0, but we're going to see what happens. They're going to see if they can get it out before full release, and that'd be great if we could get, more factions in. We do have modding, so we can actually make custom factions now as well if we wanted to. But seeing the official Great Britain faction added would be awesome, because we're getting tired of using the same weapons, the same vehicles, the same skins. It'd be cool to see, more variation. A rework of insurgent models. We saw these pictures a couple recaps ago. They look really nice. The current ones look like they're wearing pajamas. I mean, the US models from before looked like they're using pajamas. And once they did that model rework, it was amazing. It was outstanding. Like, it was just, no more pajamas. Get rid of all pajama models. No more pajama models. It's awesome to see that they're working on that aesthetic part of the game. Randomized AAS. This is a big one, guys, because we go back to that replayability for squad and how, right now the game modes are really stale. There's not too much dynamic play. It's almost the same kind of strategy every time you play a game. I try to go out of my way and do like crazy fun stuff, like build a super fob here or sneak in there, or do different things every game. I try to, but it gets really limiting when the layers that you play are the exact same every single time. So seeing randomized AES is going to be huge, because you're never going to know where the caps are going to be, and it's going to change how you play every single time you play the game. And I think that's going to be absolutely outstanding. Territory control, I'm not too hyped about. I know they kind of showcased it before, and they kind of have like a very alpha version in game right now that no servers run. And just from that experience, I didn't really like territory control. But I mean, if they can fully flesh it out like their other game modes, I'm totally down for more game modes. Like more variability, more fun, more dynamic play. and another unannounced game mode. So it's gonna be cool to see what kind of flavor they can bring to the game, and breathe life into the older game modes as well. An evaluation of the medic system with the possibility of serious change. So this is kind of cryptic because they don't talk about how they're gonna change it. So there's a balance, I think, between the medics. You want to medics, you want to have them fun to play, but you don't want to have them overly complex, because a lot of people enjoy playing medics, and a lot of people hate playing medics, right? So you have to like, the mind of a medic player is very different than the mind of the average squad player, because how they want to play the game is completely different. And I love that, how each role has like their own mindset. And maybe we'll go into videos regarding the mindset of each role, but like, they gotta find the balance between making the medic class fun enough to play without making it cumbersome to play, right? Or complicated to play. So if they add like too complicated of a medic system, it's gonna be like just a hassle to use. But right now it's just too boring. It's like point and click bandage, point and click medic bag. So there's not really too much going on as far as interaction with the medic there. So seeing some way to make medic more fun, like, that's a tough and difficult challenge. But if they can figure that out, like, all the medic players are going to be loving it. An evaluation of the basics of fob rules, rally points, and spawning mechanics, with, once again, cryptic, with the possibility of serious change. So right now, you've heard me talk about it a lot, how I think that like rally points are kind of like really, really strong right now. Like, you could almost fight an entire game off of rally points, so long as no one runs over your rally point. So I don't know. I feel like the spawning in squad isn't punishing enough, and I know a lot of players disagree with me. But I just feel like there's no reason to wait for a medic. Like, you see me sometimes, and if the medic's not right on top of me and I know it can get an instant respawn, I'll give up and instantly respawn on the rally. Just because it's a really weird way that they have the spawning system set up, with the amount of time you have to wait and the productivity that you lose being dead. Because if I have to wait an additional like 5 minutes for a medic, then I'm gonna give up and respawn, because the spawn timer is so short, and I'm losing time on the battlefield that I could be helping my squad win a firefight. So I don't know. I don't know how they're gonna change it. Like, I think they should either nerf the rallies and increase the spawning time, or at least increase the time before you can give up. Don't let players just instantly give up. Like, they gotta figure it out. I'm not gonna presume to know how they're gonna fix it, and that I know the answer. But personally, I think it needs to be longer. A rework to suppression. This excites me so much, because right now suppression is something you can fight through. Like, it's something that you, like, an experienced player, suppression doesn't even exist. Right, you're just gonna challenge whatever's shooting at you, unless it's like a 30 cal or 30 millimeter or something like that. It's just that's it. Like, unless it's a 30 millimeter or a Crow's M2A1, like, you're gonna challenge everything else, and it's just it's really cheesy. It feels really cheesy when like suppression doesn't work. That's why, like, we love the One Life Hardcore Squad Ops events so much, is because players are psychologically introduced to suppression in those. Whereas in public games, because you have the ability to respawn, you can't, you don't care, because you'll just respawn. And going back to the spawn system, the spawn is so low, you just give up and respawn anyway. So these two hand in hand, I think, are going to be really, really, really interesting to see the direction of the game. And then performance pass. Everyone, like, that should be a hands down. Like, everyone wants to have performance be better. Things that are not likely to make it in 1.0, and I know a lot of you are going to be upset with this, but commanders and fire teams are not going to make it to 1.0 probably, and that makes me sad. That makes me a little sad, because I feel like commanders, like, it's a very useful thing to have a single point of leadership among the team, because you'll get squads that just do weird individual things, and they're not really rallied under one strategy. Unless they're like really chatting it up in the pre-staging lobby, it's really hard to get all 4 squad leaders to consistently act on a plan throughout the entirety of the match. And that's because, like, no one really knows who to listen to, right? There's no real single point of leadership. Whereas in squad ops, we do run commanders, and it's like very clear. Like, when the command says do this, that's the plan, and the entire team gets behind it and does it. And it's beautiful when that happens. But in public games, it's kind of like 4 headless chickens running around trying to shepherd 8 other headless chickens, and it's just, I don't know, it's just messy. And that kind of ties in with the fire teams as well. More organization and more structure for that organization, supported by the in-game engine and UI, adds a lot more flexibility, maneuverability, and possibilities within the game, because you'll have more control over your teams and you'll be able to do more elaborate maneuvers and strategies, at least in vanilla games. What we're talking about here is more vanilla, because in private games or the clan scrimmages and stuff like that, organized clans and teams run, they have their own innate leadership within their clan or within their event. But for public play, I think commanders and fire teams would add a lot of structure, a lot of clear chain of command, and allow games to run a lot smoother and a lot cooler maneuvers to be executed. So they're going to consider having a public roadmap. So as far as we know, there might be a private roadmap that they have behind the scenes. And I'm sure they do. There's no way they're just making decisions, because that would be absurd. So we'll see if that ever goes public, but hopefully. So we're gonna go through. There's a lot of questions here. I'm only gonna answer the important ones. So 1.0, yeah, as we were talking about, is the exit of early access, which is full launch, right? So that's what we're talking about as far as 1.0. So locked doors. They kind of showcased this, like, oh my god, I think it's a year ago now. So it's not something that it's coming before 1.0. So they showcased it a year ago, and something must have happened or something, because like they were all talking about, oh, the breacher kit and locked doors. You're gonna be able to close locked doors. I think this is when they revamped Fool's Road and they added the fortress with all those underground tunnels. I think this is when they first added all those tunnel networks underground with those like door hinges and stuff. They're like, yeah, you're gonna be able to open and close these doors and breacher kit, blah blah blah. But it's been a year and we haven't seen any of that. And now we're hearing that's not coming out until after 1.0. And it's just, I don't know. It's disappointing. It's upsetting, but understandable. They probably have like much better things to be working on, like helicopters and stuff. So I'm totally all for pushing some things back, as long as they can, deliver the bigger assets, like, helicopters, tanks, all that cool stuff. Same thing with the breacher kit, right? This is the same thing with the locked doors, right? So this guy read that recap. So breacher kit, once again, likely post 1.0. So, I mean, they got to be executing on these other assets, because they're pushing a lot of stuff back that they hyped up a year ago, and it's disappointing to read, and it's kind of upsetting, but it will be understandable if they can push out other content. And I'm sure they are, right? They're very busy at work, working on their own engine and stuff, or their own OWI core and stuff like that. So, the factions and everything. So they just need to deliver. That's it. I just want them to deliver on helicopters, tanks, and the randomized game mode. Everything else, so long as it comes out at a reliable pace, I'll be okay with. With V10, you guys have introduced the possibility of logistics trucks to take resources. Will there be logistical helicopters? They would love to have it in, but they can't promise it. So kind of a non-answer. So moving on. They're focusing on the Brits. We're gonna keep moving here. Let's see if there's any other important. All right, so the battle recorder, which is like the ability to replay games. They have a semi-functional version of it, and this is gonna be great for content creation, because we're gonna be able to make videos based on the battle recorder and awesome stuff like that. So it isn't 100% promised, but it's likely. So stand by for that. Once that gets released, it's gonna be a lot of cool content coming out. So we're going to the medic system here, right? Is individual limb condition still being considered? Can we expect to walk slower or swear weapons more if being shot in the leg or arm? If so, how do you plan to have the players return to full combat effectiveness? So this ties in with the direction of the game, right? The more battle experience part of the game, as well as that medic change that they're talking about. So they're talking about how they're going to impact, how damage is going to impact your combat effectiveness. And they're talking about how it can come out before patch 1.0. Now let's go into this a little bit. Right now in squad, if I'm challenging you and we're shooting at each other and I hit you once, there's no aim punch, there's no flinch, there's no increased sway or anything like that right now. All you have is you just take X amount of damage, which means that player that just took the round, just took a 7.62 or 5.56 round in the chest or 5.45, he's going to shoot right back at you with total accuracy. And that just, for me, I don't feel very experienced or immersed when that happens. I feel very upset and frustrated, right? I'm sure a lot of you have experienced that, where you take a shot at someone, you hit them, and they just spin around and shoot back at you. And it's just upsetting, because in real life, and even just thinking about it, if you take a round anywhere on your body, there's no way in hell you're going to be able to spin and land an accurate shot or challenge the person shooting at you. I totally fully expect you to return fire, but there's no way you should be having pinpoint accuracy after you take a round in the chest, arm, leg, or wherever, right? So hopefully this change comes sooner rather than later, because I think it's a really, really, I guess, frustrating aspect of squad. It's almost akin to drop shotting. It's almost at that level of frustration, but we'll see what they do. Same thing, aim punch, right? That's what we're talking about, aim punch by the neural, right? So he doesn't want to get too detailed with it, but getting hit will impact it, and it's something for up for discussion. Actually, it's not guaranteed. Excuse me, I misspoke. It's definitely up for discussion. It's not definitely being added to the game. I really hope it gets added to the game. I don't understand why it'd be a little controversial, because it's I mean, if the direction you're going is for battle experience, there's nothing immersive or fun experience wise shooting at someone, injuring them, and then having them snap to and kill you. It's I don't know. It feels cheesy to me, but whatever they're going to do, they're going to do. They're talking about the reworking of the game modes. We already talked about that. The round timer is not really too important, so they're gonna change it. V10 has changed the gameplay a lot, and they want to see what direction they're going. So I don't know. There's a lot of concern as far as one part of the community thought the game was going to go a certain way, and the other part thought it was going to go a different way. And everyone's got their own opinions on the direction squad's going to go. And this is kind of, I guess, the downside to not having a public roadmap, is that the community doesn't really know where you're going. So we're kind of just rolling on our own preconceptions of like how you're going to, drive the game and what direction it's going. But we don't have any like concrete, like, here, look, I'm pointing to this. This is the direction that we're going. And everyone can see here that these changes are going to be made and the direction is going this way. So before this post, this AMA, no one really knew what was going on. And I think after this change, after the V10, and after this Reddit post, I think people have a better idea of like the direction that squad's going to go. And I think that's gonna help a lot to avoid blindsiding the community as far as game design changes and things of that nature. All right. They're talking about the removal of reshade. I don't really want to go into it too much. But they're going to try and bring up the visuals of squad, because reshade kind of got banned a little bit because of the zoom thing. It was a whole thing. I don't want to get into it right now, but they're gonna look into the lighting and anti-aliasing and fixing that stuff so that you won't need to use third-party programs like reshade to make the game look good. I've never used reshade. I think the game looks fine how it is. I know a lot of people who use reshade and who swear by it, but I thought the game was fine. I didn't want to fuck with anything, and I'm still happy with how the game looks. But if they can make it look better, fuck, man, I'm all for it. All right. So let's see. Yeah, we're just gonna skip through a couple of these questions. Okay. I mean, this guy's talking about more AT options and different munitions, and we already saw that being added with like the AT, the javelins getting added, so more hat stuff like that. As far as the different munitions for vehicles, we have like the HE rounds for the 30mm and the AP rounds for the 30mm. So I think that was like kind of their testing of how they want to do that, but if they can make it work, they can make it work, and it'd be really cool to see, how granular they get. I just don't want to get too crazy with it. Let's keep going. High priority on optimization. I mean, of course, that's like it better be, because I know a lot of people see my gameplay and they're like, Karma, how do you run the game so well? And it's just like, I dumped so much money on this computer. That's how. It's a very expensive computer, and like a lot of people don't have that luxury of being able to pour so much money into their system, and they're upset with the performance that they're getting on the current systems. And of course, it's in early access, but I hope the game becomes more accessible, and more optimized the further we get into towards version 1.0. All right. Do you plan? This is a very important question. Do you plan to develop and support Squad for a long time and make it the best it can be after launch, like you did for years on Project Reality? Or would you rather move on to another project? So this is really important because personally, I want to see Squad live a long and fulfilling life with tons of DLC and not tons of DLC, but tons of post-release content. I'll word it like that. With a ton of post-release content, ton of patches, and just to keep the game alive. Because I really do love Squad. I really do think it's one of the best games ever. It's not milsim, it's not arcade, it's somewhere in the middle where you have, a really battle experienced, immersive platform that is responsive and snappy enough. So it's not milsim at all. I want to just make that, very clear that I don't want it to be milsim. I don't want it to be arcade. I want it to be somewhere within the middle, leaning towards that experience and immersive side. Simply because there's no other game like it. Like, the closest you can come to is Arma. But Arma's controls and shooting is so garbage that it can't even compete here. So Squad has a really cool opportunity to fill this really niche role in that direction. And I don't want to see it go further towards the arcade side because there's a ton of arcade shooters already. I don't want another one. All right. So it depends on how they sell the game. And that's a reasonable answer, right? Because if the game, doesn't sell, then they don't have funding, then they can't continue supporting it, right? So if the game can continue supporting the developers, right, and fund the developers, then I fully hope that they continue working on post-release content. So they're definitely going to have a baseline amount of features after full launch, right? So 1.1, 1.2. So that's cool to hear that they are going to be releasing stuff after launch. But, if Squad keeps selling, and it sounds like they're going to keep working on the project if you keep selling, and that's great news to hear because I really would like to have a long lifespan on Squad. Okay, territory control game mode, they're working on it. Helicopter, we talked about that already. All right, so these are a couple questions that I asked, a couple of the important questions that, I wanted answered. So is there an overhaul or improvement to the current suppression system? And I just wanted to hear yes, and, we got it. So cool, awesome, suppression's being reworked. So I go on to talk about the direction of the game, and this is where I believe is Merlin goes on and responds. I think it was Merlin and Drav who are answering questions. I might be incorrect on that, but both of those guys are OWI devs. But yeah, it was just really cool to see this answer that they want to have, and he doesn't want it to be a military simulator. And I was wrong to say milsim type because that's not really what the direction I want to go, and I shouldn't have used that word. But battle experience, right? A very immersive platform, like immersion. Squad is the most immersive fucking game that is easy to play. Like, Arma is extremely immersive as well, but there's so much you need to do to get Arma to work for you. Like, as far as graphically, as far as controls, community, and mod content. It's just a fucking nightmare to get Arma to work. But Squad is like plug and play, and you get that awesome tactical experience, that battle experience, that immersion, and I want it to stay that way because there's no other game like it. I can't think of a single other game that fills this role as well as Squad. Now this is a cool question that I asked, or I thought it was cool, is dev approved mod servers, because you think about modding and the power of modding. You have so many members in the Squad community willing to work and create awesome content. From assets to game modes to maps to factions to all this awesome stuff, all this untapped, unlimited power in the community. And the developers just need to enable that community, and they could just be pouring out content that could be easily played. Right now, we have a very active mod community in Squad that's constantly churning out, maps and things of that nature. But it's really hard to move from that step of creation to public play. Just because the servers and how they work and getting them populated and having them split between community and public, it's just the divide, the gap from the creation of the content to actually playing it consistently there's a barrier there. There's a very large barrier there. So they're talking about it, and hopefully they push it through, because there's so much unlimited power there that if they can approve mod servers, like, you can add so much content to the game and so much replayability. I really hope that they push that. As far as pacing, right, we went back to like how we want to pace it. And right now they're worrying about the meat grinder situation, right? He brings up the meat grinder. So there's a current meta within squad on a lot of like cap zones and objective zones. It just literally turns into a grind of like fob versus fob slamming bodies against each other. And I feel like a lot of this has to do with buildings, because a lot of the meat grinder situations happen in buildings, because there's like a fob in a building. You can't get the fob out of the building unless you go in the building. The fob's on the fucking cap point, so you got to get rid of the hab. And it's just you're going and you're just pouring bodies into the point, and it doesn't feel tactical, immersive, and like very little teamwork, because you're just fucking rushing in to these buildings that are indestructible. And it's just, oh my god, it just blows my mind sometimes of how like meat grindy it gets in certain situations, in certain buildings, on specific parts of particular maps. And it's just, oh my god, like I'm traumatized. I have like flashbacks of like trying to take the storage building on storage side at the southwest corner, or the building in on Basra second point or third point. It's just like these multi-story buildings or these warehouses with 3 entrances that get super fobbed up. It's just, oh my god, I get like, it's just fucking shudder at that stuff, because it's like a 30-minute meat grind of walking into doorways and dying. But like the cap points that don't have buildings, like those are some of the most fun positions to play on, because you have so much maneuvering, so much positioning that you have to work with. You have a lot of open terrain to work with, and it's just really awesome taking these caps. And one of the maps that does this extremely fucking well is Kohat. Kohat is an awesome map because it's so open, and there's very few vehicle assets, and there's Kohat Invasion in specific. But Kohat Invasion, once again, it's such an open map. There's very few vehicles with optics, and just in general, very few vehicles. And then there's very few fucking buildings. So you see firefights happening all over the map in Invasion Kohat, right? Like that's one of the maps that actually gets played a lot around the map and around server rotations, because it's such a fun layer. It once again, we're getting back to how it's like repetitive, right? It's kind of the same strategy every single time. But as far as having firefights across the entirety of the map almost, or at least along that northern side of the river, it's awesome, because these zones just, the map design on Kohat allows for so much to happen on so many different parts of the map. So when I talked about this in a question as far as map design, that a lot of the cap points are on really defensible areas, like storage site or you know, these buildings. Like the cap zone is in these fortresses, and every cap zone is in these fortresses. So it turns into this thing where you have this huge 4x4K map, but none of the combat happens outside of the cap zones, because the cap zones have boiled down to CQB compound clearing meat grinder situations, because you can't fight from off the cap. You have to get into the point to directly affect it. Whereas Kohat, you can control points by controlling areas outside of the cap. And I think that's wonderful. I think that's awesome. It creates points of interest and valuable areas of the map that are not the cap zones. But when you put all the cap zones in compounds, in buildings, in structures, the map, like the gameplay boils down to, all right, we took this compound, drive for 10 minutes, get us to that compound. All right, we take that compound. All right, drive us another 10 minutes across the map. All right, stop here, infantry combat for 30 minutes. Like it's like a stop go kind of play style. But with Kohat Invasion, and I keep going back to this example because it's just such a great map layer. You have this fluid and continuous flow of combat from every single point leading up to the next point, because the map is so open. And the cap zones are so big and so easily, or so hard to control by simply sitting on them. And I think it's just such a brilliant example of map design. Like, I really do love Kohat Invasion. So they are gonna, they answer that question was yes, they're working on it. So we're gonna go through here. We're a little bit halfway through, so we're just gonna kind of continue rolling through this. So let's see here. So what does the dev team think of Arma style zoom to help visibility? What's the latest update? So we're just gonna talk about the first point, because we already talked about territory control. So it's definitely something that they're deciding to work on as far as Arma style zoom. So what Arma style zoom is, you can hold right click and it'll zoom you in a little bit further, just so you can see a little bit further. And I think that's a feature that's definitely needed, because in squad it's hard to see where you're getting shot from. Like, I'll tell you right now, like especially for a new player, it's hard to spot who's shooting you. It's nearly impossible when you're brand new to the game. You're gonna spend the first 50 hours of the game getting shot at by people you have no idea from where. Once you get more used to the sounds of the game and typical places where players are, it's kind of easier to use deductive reasoning to like understand where players are. But as far as the new player, like it's hard to see things, and especially I'm used to having the binoculars, so I can see anything at any time with the binoculars usually. But like to the 8 other people in my squad, aside from the marksman roles that get played maybe 50%, 25% of the time, they have 1 times visibility unless they're scoped in, and it's hard as fuck to see things. And I definitely don't think adding more optics is the answer. I don't want that to happen. I don't want more optics in the game. I want more visibility for players, but not more optics on their weapons. So the Arma style zoom is definitely a way to kind of meet that halfway, right? You're giving players more the ability to see things a little bit better, but not to engage lethally with optics on their weapons. So I think that's a really important thing, and it's going to be interesting to see how they execute it. They're talking about layers. We already talked about that. All right, so is there like a 10% chance we'll be getting player control planes? This is really, really, really important because I think they kind of talked about in their Kickstarter how they wanted to add planes, and there's rumors going around how they couldn't add planes because the maps were too small and this and that, and are planes coming, are they not? They added the A10 kind of showcase thing, but it wasn't player controlled, it was called in and stuff like that. So honestly, like they said, it's something that they probably overpromised, and that's sad to hear, right? That we're not gonna get player controlled planes, because that's a big thing that I think a lot of people were hoping for, and a lot of people were like unclear about is, are there gonna be planes or not? So it's looking like a no. So a 10% chance, but likely a no. Air controlled strikes or airstrikes and non-player controlled airplanes is something that's much more heavily considered, and we've been seeing this happen a lot of in a lot of other tactical shooters like Day of Infamy, right? Day of Infamy has a ton of non-player controlled assets. You got artillery, smoke barrages, typhoon strikes, carpet bombs, and all these other non-player controlled assets. In Postscriptum as well, when we got to play that pre-alpha showcase, there were a ton of Spitfire strafing runs and stuff like that, and you saw all these planes flying in, and it was really immersive. So I think just having planes in the game, period, whether they're player controlled or not, adds to a ton to the immersion and battle experience of the game, and the scale, the mental scale of the battle that you're fighting, adding that overhead asset. Whether it's player control or not, I don't really care. I know a lot of people want to fly planes. I don't really want to, so I don't really care. But I think it's important to have non-player controlled airplanes at the very least, and they have been working on that, right? I think maybe it was half a year ago, they showcased, maybe it was a year ago, holy crap, they showcased the A10, right? The A10 non-player controlled call-in, where you could call in strafing runs, bombing runs, from the squad leader kit, and that was awesome, and I hope they end up adding that and balancing that, because like just hearing that A10, oh god, you guys love that sound. I know everyone here loves the A10 noise, so hopefully that we see it. So this was a very important question, right? Player controlled planes. The implementation of resting guns on surfaces. I think Arma does this when you don't have a bipod and you have like a windowsill or a wall in front of you. You get more stability to your weapon. So no, unfortunately, because of bandwidth. So performance stuff, it's probably not going to happen. I really hoped it would, because like it's kind of, I don't know, not frustrating. Frustrating's not the word, but it's disappointing maybe. I don't know. Maybe not as harsh as disappointing, but it's upsetting when you have your gun on a wall and you're getting the same amount of sway that you would in a game. One thing I really hope they do though is remove the windowsills. There's no reason for the windowsills. Like the crossbar windowsills that intersect in a lot of the windows on the wooden houses. Just Fucking please, get rid of them. Please. It's so annoying because, like, they're at the perfect height where you can't shoot out, and it's just infuriating, and there's no reason to have them in the game, and it's just, oh, God, I get triggered when I'm sitting in a window, and my gun's like, I'm trying to shoot at the window, but I can't get the right height. If I stand up, I'm shooting the windows, the cross divider. If I lean, I'm hitting the bottom of the windowsill. It's just infuriating. So please, 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 remove those fucking cross intersection windowsills. They just trigger the fuck out of me. But we'll see if they actually do. It's probably something that's really low on the priorities, but hopefully, you know, they will, because it's just, there's no reason to have them, and it just infuriates players. So one thing we're going to talk about here is core inventory, right? So core inventory was, I think it would have allowed them to get a lot really modular with player loadouts. I believe that's what that was. And I think that got pushed back. He doesn't really answer here. This is kind of a non-answer. So a lot of us are still curious as to like core inventory. Because they reworked it. They figured out a different way to do core inventory without really doing core inventory. So I would have liked to hear a little bit more about this. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll find out more about what happened here with core inventory and how they fixed that, or whatever they're doing with it, because there's not too much information on that. I think it got scrapped. There was like a rumor it got scrapped, or they got changed, or they found a better, more efficient way to do things. But I'd like an update on that. All right, how close are we to dragging down players? This is something that, you know, I get asked in like anytime I cover another game. Like, is there injured player dragging? Is there player dragging in this game? Hello, BattleBit? Yeah, player dragging? BattleBit has player dragging, by the way. So player dragging, please. Postscriptum, player dragging, hell let loose. Medics, drag players, please. So hopefully, you know, they're gonna push it out soon because they're done prototyping it, or at least they're prototyping it. Period. So we'll see, but most likely not until after, you know, full release. So that's upsetting again, because, you know, it's something that was talked about, you know, a year or more ago, and it's like it's not coming out till after full release. But we'll see what happens. Okay, let's keep moving here. We go back to that newer players' learning curve. They're trying to like figure out how they want to help that. Yeah, I think we're almost at the end here. But yeah, I mean, there's a ton of stuff. If you want to go through and read the entire post, because there's a lot of questions in here about things that you might be interested in, like a couple of the more granular, more specific questions that get asked about certain aspects of the game. I'll leave that link in the description and the comments, because there's a lot of good information here. This is the first real time that OWI has come forward and answered community questions so directly, and so many of them. So like, if you're really looking to like see how much information you can like squeeze out of this Reddit AMA post, go ahead and check out the description and the comments. But yeah, we're gonna keep going here until a lot of these are repeat questions. All right, any new plans on destruction? Right, this is kind of a big one, because like maybe they've been working on some secret destruction thing and stuff like that, but right now they're only focused on like minor levels of destructions like doors. But once again, doors aren't even coming out till like post 1.0, so that's gonna be a little bit of some time before that happens. So like, I don't know, man. Buildings infuriate me, dude. I hate buildings with a goddamn passion. Yeah. Let's see. I think that's pretty much it. We're gonna pretty much wrap it up here. A lot of these are repeat questions, and we'll get to it in another video if you guys like this, you know, kind of thing. Hopefully OWI does more of these, because it's really important, especially with no fucking public roadmap, to get any like inner understanding of what they're doing, because they're so closed lip about it. But hopefully we get more information as far as direction, and not just like the recap teasers of like future content, but like design choices, direction, and where they're going, and the overall like intent. Because that would be awesome to get a better understanding of like things to get hyped up about, and cool things that we can be excited for, and when to expect them and stuff like that. But yeah, so thank you so much, OWI, especially Will or Merlin, for answering a lot of those questions. I do believe Drav answered a couple of them as well. So thank you so much, OWI, for answering these. And once again, I'll leave that link to the full thing in the description in the comments. So thank you so much, guys, for watching. I know this was a longer video, but there's a ton of information, and we didn't even go through all of it. But you got my take on a lot of the answers that they gave. You got a lot of those cool questions that you guys have been asking me in the comments and stuff like that. So hopefully this sates your thirst for knowledge for now. And you know, we're just gonna have to hold on until the next time they release a ton of information. So, you know, if you want to go through it, ton of information here. Otherwise, thank you so much, guys, for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.